Hello and welcome
to the Heinun Couples Podcast,
where we empower blessed couples
to deepen the love, fostering mutual pleasure, connection, and joy.
So let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Heinun Couples Podcast. Today's episode is all about the power of asking for help. Many couples struggle with asking for help, yet mastering this skill before having children can ease the transition into parenthood and strengthen the bond between spouses. We'll break down societal pressure, especially on women, to do it all, and explore how couples can create balanced, supportive partnerships.
Joining us today is Deborah Cali-Matsugane, a mindfulness coach, co-founder of Mom's Village, and a mom of soon-to-be 2 girls. She shares invaluable insights on letting go of control, clearly communicating needs, and embracing the joy of receiving help. Get ready on an inspiring and practical conversation that will help you build a more peaceful and connected home. Enjoy.
Enjoy.
So hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for being here and agreeing to come to our Heinun Couples Podcast.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So today's topic is how to ask for help, let's say.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So we have a question for you.
Right.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking yes, how to ask for help, but I think we're focusing on the couple relationship, right? Because this can go friends, family, that's a whole other world, right? But
yeah, that's right. We're focusing on the couple.
Yes.
Yeah. So how or what inspired you to emphasize the importance of asking for help before having kids? What was that?
Yeah. So last summer, I was in Italy, and somebody, one of a couple that was blessed, they asked me, what's the most important thing to prepare before having children? And I think what people often think about is the sort of external preparations, like you need to have financial stability and a big house enough. And those are important things, right? Or people think about chores, who is going to do what, changing diapers and things like that. But the first thing that came to mind for me was, I guess, especially for the wife, is practicing and learning how to ask for help to your husband. And I found myself in a position where I haven't practiced that. And I was very much used to be this sort of very independent and doing everything by myself after so many years of STF and also just in general growing up this way. And there is a lot of narrative now in movies and podcasts about how women can do everything by themselves.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this is very, very present in society, that, we don't need anybody, but that's not really true. And especially when it comes to having kids, I feel like this is a very key point to really have it set before children come, because it will come to a point where you will need help. And if you haven't unlocked that sort of dynamic with your husband where you're feeling comfortable asking for help and he doesn't feel accused or threatened by it, because that could also happen, or judged or whatever, then you'll have to unravel this eventually. And maybe you'll be forced to have to face this sort of dynamic when having a baby already, which is making everything harder, right?
Yeah, more stressful.
Yeah. And I think this is especially important when having kids, because I don't think people realize how much you will be depending on your husband as a wife when you become a mom. And the biggest difference is that before, the most basic actions of for your survival, you can do by yourself. But when you have a baby, taking a shower or eating a meal, you'll need your husband's support to do that, especially in the first few months. And so your survival literally depends on your husband right from the beginning, because somebody has to be with the baby and the baby needs you all the time. And so if you haven't learned how to ask for help, then you'll find yourself in this sort of situation where you just can't eat or you can't have a shower because you're trying to do everything, but that's not possible.
Yeah. So it's kind of first, before having a baby or building a family, is becoming a team where both of the husband and the wife can share their needs and ask, hey, I need your support in that, and this or that. And yeah, as you said, it's like in our society is often like, yeah, I'm a strong woman, I don't need the help of my of a man or whatever. But it's like our movement, it's like a family, it's husband and wife, and
Mm,
it's everybody has their strong part or
yeah,
their strong.
things they're better at, yeah.
Right, right. And that's okay if they're strong in this or that part, but this is like how you complement each other, right? But learning how to ask for support in this or that way, that is
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't, then you will end up in this like survival mode that so many moms experience because you just okay, so I'm talking from my personal experience. This is something I should have said at the beginning, right? Every mom experiences something different. Every couple has their own story. But what I feel like is unless, you just can't do everything by yourself. And so that's the beauty of being in a relationship with a husband that can support you. So let's cooperate, right? And make everything easier for everyone.
Yeah, right. So, what was your specific challenge for asking support to your husband, and how did that change over time?
Yeah. So there was a very big wall I had to break. And I think many of us experience this. I think both men and women probably this asking for help requires vulnerability. And the root reason can be different for people. What happened for me was that I grew up in the mindset and I lived most of my life feeling like I don't need help, feeling like I can do things by myself. I should do things by myself. I shouldn't need help.
Mm.
And so when I felt I can't do this, I need help, if it was a wrong thing to happen. And that was one problem that I felt I had to break, sort of mindset, right? That if I need help, it means I'm doing something wrong or I have something wrong or that I'm not doing things right. The other big thing was really allowing myself to receive love and affection in the form of help. And, again, this is about vulnerability, right? Being able to open your heart and let somebody help you with, being vulnerable that way and receive their love this way. And that is something that, growing up, like, because my parents were doing mission a lot, and it's something that I learned thanks to my husband. This sort of like opening up and receiving love through being helped. And that was a beautiful discovery, something that really unlocked in my heart while being in this relationship with him. I felt I'm so grateful for, because it does bring us to a whole new level of being ourselves and being able to express ourselves fully, but also being on a new level, like out of that survival mode, and if you're feeling good, especially as a wife, then your family feels good as well. Your baby benefits from it, your husband benefits from it. And so everything kind of flows better.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. It seems like you're inviting someone you love, your partner, into your life, like that little bit more, and then that person can help and give love to you in that way. But you have to invite him first.
Yeah. Yeah, and what happened to us is we got, especially before having kids, but it kind of started changing after having our first daughter. We got into this disruptive cycle where I was overwhelmed and stressed and angry and upset, but I wouldn't tell him what I needed. And so he would see me being struggling, and he would get upset because he doesn't know how to help me because I'm not telling him. And then the whole atmosphere in the house is just, we get angry at each other, we isolate ourselves like from each other, and it's just, it's obviously, it doesn't feel good, right? And it doesn't allow our relationship to grow and to go deeper. I basically really had to learn how to be more forward and more clear in expressing myself, which is a challenge, I think, for us women. We think in like so many layers. And when it comes to our partners, if they are men, right, they think, I used to think like one liner, if I need something, then I have to say it in one line for him to really catch. Because otherwise, if I start a speech, it's easy for them to get lost, and it's understandable, right? And he does really wants to know how he can help me. And if I make things complicated, then he gets lost, right? And so it's important for me, that's what I learned, to really make things more simple and more direct so that he can catch the message.
I feel also that it's sometimes difficult to let go of control. At least for me,
Mm,
I was doing everything by myself before. And so I think I know best.
right.
And then I'm not sure how you experience it with me, Basti, but sometimes having a certain expectation how things have to be done,
Yeah.
and they're not happening in that way. But then how do you feel when I have a certain expectation, ask you for help, and then I it's not the way I expect it to be?
I have an example, a specific one. I think it was cleaning up the kitchen
Oh
and
yeah.
putting away things in a certain way.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was just happy that I fulfilled the task. I cleaned up the kitchen for my standards, and I put some degree of thought into it. Like put everything in the cupboards, close the cupboards, everything looks neat. But then Daria would come home and look into it, and then she would be like, "Oh, why are the plates here? They should be there. And why is the cup here? That's the glasses part. The cups are here." And I would get annoyed at that because I didn't feel appreciated.
Right.
And she felt a little bit annoyed because I didn't put enough thought into it, I guess. So that could have been avoided in the talk afterwards, where she explains, I would love to have the cups here, everything else here. And then, yeah, next time will be better, hopefully. Which it's not always, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But it does come down to really making things clear and simple,
Mm.
right? And I think this is a hard part for us women to do because we have a whole process going on in our mind constantly. And it's hard for us to get down to that level of really expressing things clearly and simply.
Mm,
But it does help a lot. And it's good practice because it also helps us to really understand what's the core of the problem and what is it that I really want. But sometimes we don't even know because we don't make that effort of like really simplifying our thoughts and simplifying things and getting down to what is it that I want.
mm. Or need, or what is
Yeah.
the that needs to be fulfilled? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So actually, not so many people feel comfortable in asking for help. And do you have maybe a practical advice for someone to become more comfortable in asking for help?
I think it's different in every couple, right? And in every situation. But I would say the first thing to do is to really make this sort of like process of clarifying what does it mean for you to get help and what is it that you need.
Mm,
I'm talking about women because I'm the wife, but like some wives prefer their husband taking care of the baby so they can do chores in peace, for example, right, and have their alone time. But some other moms prefer to be with the baby and have their husband do the cleaning and do everything else. And this is just an example, right? But it does help to first clarify what is it that would make me feel happy, what is it that would actually help me.
mm,
And then an exercise that was very helpful for me was to always start from objective reality. So it's very easy for us women to build castles in our head and interpret what our husband does or wants based on what we think, right? But it really helps a lot to start from the objective reality of the situation. So thinking, I've done this, this, and this today. That's why I'm tired and I need a break, right? And simply communicate this just like that. And maybe your husband in that moment is just watching TV, completely clueless about how much you've been working that day because maybe he hasn't been home or something, and you're expecting him to know when he couldn't possibly, right? And so what helps in order to break the wall of, do I deserve help? Do I, how can I do this? Is really start phrasing the reality, like the objective reality that has happened. And this helps him also not to feel attacked, because you're just stating facts and you're just saying, this is what happened today. And that's why I'm tired. Can you please help? Right? Instead of going to him and it's like, oh, you're watching TV the whole time. Just, be with the baby for a bit. Right? And so there's a technique that has helped me just focus on reality rather than my mind castles.
Yeah.
Yeah. And more self-awareness, like I said, just knowing what is it that you need help with.
That makes sense to simplify, express it, and not going into the mind cinema or. And it's like, what is he doing? Why is he not supporting me? Why I was the
Yeah.
whole day just like running around or working as well. Like there's a lot of, I mean,
Yeah.
wives working as well, and then having to
Mm,
do the whole house chores as well. And I feel like for us, like at the very beginning, I was really frustrated. I was like, oh my God, why is he not helping me? I was asking for help, but he doesn't do it. And what I've learned is again like letting go of this control. It's like
mm,
to express, okay, for example, the dishes have to be done. Can you do this in the next half an hour because
right.
we're having people coming over, or we're just cleaning our stuff? Is this possible for you to do it in the next half an hour? Like kind of giving a time frame, or asking in what time frame are you able to do it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
rather than expecting, okay, I told you, but it's not done. So
Yeah.
what are you doing? And another thing is, for example, we say, okay, we're gonna clean the apartment. This and this is to do, like the kitchen, the bathroom, vacuuming. Basti, what would you like to do?
Mm,
Just
Yeah, that's
then,
good.
right?
Yeah.
Because I felt like before I told him what to do, and how do you feel that when I tell you to do things?
Yeah, of course, it's much nicer. I can pick
mm,
the stuff that I would want to do, but
Right,
I'm still helping.
right,
And if you have something you definitely want to do, and yeah, you wouldn't suggest it. So yeah, I guess it would always be a help for you, I guess. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Because then I feel like I get still the help, but I feel like you are still kind of in control of what you want to do,
Mm.
rather than okay, these things have to be done, and then yeah,
yeah, that's where the cooperation comes in, right?
right,
That's where the balance and the flow and the dynamic like works well. And I think what helps is also to know that they want to help. Like, I think because we do so much as women, we always think, tend to end up in that sort of cycle mindset, thinking, oh, they don't care, they don't love me enough, they don't want to help. But starting from the mindset that they actually do love you and they do want to help really helps in asking for help, like in knowing that they want to help, they just need a direction, and then they'll do it.
right,
Here's a men's perspective.
Right.
If Daria thinks maybe 5 or 10 minutes about, okay, we need to clean the kitchen, clean the bathrooms, clean the hallway, because we have guests over in the evening. She has thought about all these things before, and
Yeah.
then she feels overwhelmed, and then she comes to me, and then she says, I need you to clean the bathroom, and because we have guests over. Then I feel like, okay, now I am not thoughtful of how our flat looks when
Mm,
guests come, because I haven't thought about it before. I haven't cleaned before. And she comes with all that, I guess, pressure that we have to get it done. And I'm just the person who helps along. And I don't want to be in that situation. So it makes so much more, it gives for me a so much more fulfilling feeling when she comes to me in the very beginning of the thought process and tells me,
mm,
so we have guests over in the evening. There's so much to do. Do you know where do you want to start? And then we could discuss the rooms together and what needs to be done together. And then it's a 50-50 part. Like we
yeah.
both feel it's the same responsibility for both of us. And I feel much better about it because we had the same eye level, I guess, when we discussed it,
Yeah.
um, comparison to the other scenario. Yeah.
And that is a very good point, because we often go to the point of asking for help when we're already like on survival mode, when we're already overwhelmed, when we can't handle this anymore. But what you just said, actually, it's really helpful to include or like ask for help from the beginning, so you don't get to the point of being stressed out and having to do things at the last minute, or when it's too late that you're already, on that survival mode.
Yeah, it was like one thing I've experienced is that we've been listening to the book Sheet Music. We're gonna do another episode on that about a Christian psychologist where he talks about sexual relationship between a husband and a wife and a marriage and so on. And he talked about like how often we as women want that the husband does this and that, but then we forget actually what does my husband need.
Mm,
And because it's like not just like that my husband helps me as a wife, but how can I support him or to fulfill his needs as well. And I've noticed that I started to think, okay, what does Basti need? One thing for men is of course also sex, so to kind of get creating this connection,
the
this
physical sort of relationship is important, yeah.
right, yeah. And I felt like when I started to be more, I asked him, what do you actually need? What do you like from my side? And because of that, it become more naturally for him to support me in without feeling like even needing to ask.
Yeah.
Sometimes I was like, oh yeah, I'm just doing like sometimes I went to the kitchen, I was like, oh wow, the kitchen's clean. What happened?
Yeah, yeah.
But I just saw really the importance of supporting each other and also being able to fulfill his needs. Of course, when later on having a child, it's difficult maybe for a specific time to fulfill the needs of the husband. I'm not sure
Mm.
yet how we're gonna do that. So, but
Right.
so I'm curious on that how we're gonna happen.
You
But
know, yeah, the interesting thing is often also that the husband has his needs, like one of the husband's needs is to make his wife happy, right? And so if you allow him to do that, then he's happy. He's fine. Like he doesn't need like, I feel like this is often the case. But like, yes, and I'm talking about the context especially of having a baby where the so many psychologists describe the best dynamic as being like the husband takes care of the wife and the wife takes care of the baby, right? Because especially at the beginning, that's almost how it has to be. But that creates that cycle of, the energy flowing that works well as well. And so, yes, we want to take care of our husbands. And I think you made a very good point in mentioning that, because this is part of also this society's narrative now that women are super strong and powerful, but what do we do with this power? We can also give it back to our husband as he's, giving it to us. And so, yeah, it's a lot to unravel, and I feel like it's a journey,
yeah,
right? And you have to practice and you have to try. And that's one of the things that really got me out of that overwhelmed in asking for help, is the knowledge that I can try and see how it goes. It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to wait until I'm on the ground to be like, okay, now I have proof that I need help, right? But it's about practicing and learning together. And if you start doing with small things, then eventually you get to that balance that you're looking for.
how long did that take for you
I
to?
mean, it's still, I'm practicing still. um, yeah, I mean, I feel like because you grow as a person and you change so much when having children, your children are growing and they change. And it's like you constantly, and that's the important thing to know. It's not like once you figure it out, then that's it,
Mm,
right? It's like you have to constantly practice and look for ways on how to make it work again and again. And so if you don't start, then it becomes harder and harder with time.
yeah, especially because their hurt is building up, and then it becomes more difficult. And as soon as you start and create this also the self awareness
Yeah.
on about yourself, but also just like seeing the partner, what's going
Mm,
on there as well, and being seen as well. That's so it's so, this is so beautiful on, yeah, it creates so much safetyness, I feel, for me at least,
Yeah.
is like being able to be seen and also see the partner.
Yeah, there's a lot of vulnerability that comes,
Yeah.
like we said, with asking for help. And I think that was one of the also another hard thing to do because I have a very hard time trusting people, right? And so why would I let somebody in if this person can potentially hurt me, if this person could potentially leave me, right? That's one of the things that as wives we might fear. And so it's about really letting go of that control you mentioned, letting go of that fear, of that worries, and just simply embracing the joy that comes with receiving help.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So now that you're very good at asking for help, how did that improve your marriage and your family life?
Yeah, no, it definitely helped with feeling more at peace,
Mm.
which means like everything works better in the house as well. Usually, right? This is generally speaking, the wife is the one who is the manager of the house, right? Like with the cleaning, with the appointments, with the children knowing whatever they need, what they prefer. And if I am out of balance, then everybody suffers, right? And so it's often that sort of mindset thinking, oh, I don't need help. But if you do need help, if you do get help and things work better, then why not? You're doing this for others as well. It's not just for you. And so to have that like more peace of mind, and generally speaking, I feel like more peace and joy in my heart as well. It's not just a mind thing where like, oh, I have less to think about, but in my heart that I feel I have more space for joy now and for calm and for love because I've made that space. I had to like carve it out a little bit, little by little. And that gives you also security for knowing that if something doesn't work out, it's okay. Like you can try again, right? And there's definitely less fights and less, stress in the house. And so it's definitely a plus.
Mm. It creates more harmony and it's kind of a common understanding somehow.
Yeah, definitely. And there's this sort of energy flowing that's
Mm.
more peaceful in the house. Yeah. I mean, we still do get into fights and stuff when we forget like how to communicate with each other. But it helps to have that sort of mindset that it's okay to ask for help.
Mm.
One thing I was thinking when I was preparing this for this podcast was, how there is a famous series that I have never watched, but it's called "It's Okay Not to Be Okay," and this quote has been going around, and I felt like for me it's never been an issue to not be okay. Like I was comfortable in that space of struggling and sort of like fighting and suffering and like denying myself. And for me, the key was to embrace the fact that it's okay to be okay. Actually, it's okay to be in that space, to allow myself to be thriving, to be actually happy, to be in a good mental space rather than always having to fight, always having to struggle. And so now I sort of crave for that. Once you start experiencing it, little by little, you raise your standards, right? And you raise your objective of where you want to be. And so yeah, you raise your level in a sense, yeah.
I mean, also when you go through challenges, I see that with us that
Mm.
when we go through difficulties, it's actually something good, not something bad.
Mm,
And then, we come out differently on the other side and then kind of learn, oh, what did I learn now from that? And it's so
right.
cool. Also to know, like, creating more awareness about myself, like, oh, that was interesting. I never knew that was such a trigger.
Mm,
Like seeing it as something positive rather than as like, oh yeah, I'm struggling, it's difficult. It's like, no, it's great.
yeah, there is a fear, right? A fear in things going wrong or like, or fighting is bad, but it's like it depends how you approach the situation,
Yeah,
right? And again, it doesn't have to be necessarily a negative event. It can be a stressful one. It can be, a bit of disruption in the couple, but that's where also growth comes about, like you said. What I'm thinking now, like when you mentioned about, you have this communication fights and then you learn something from it, and I realize actually one of the challenges that comes with having children is finding that time even to fight, the time to struggle together. Because there were so many times, especially in the first few months, where I notice issues, but I'm like, I either don't have the energy to deal with this, or I don't have the patience, or I don't have the time, or the baby needs me right now, and we can't talk about what happened, right?
Mm.
And so this general couple advice, I guess, but it's just so important to carve some time that is not just for fighting or for solving situations, but to have regular sort of time together, so that if there is something to bring up, you can do it naturally. It is very hard to do in the first few months, but what we have been doing for a while is just simply to watch like some series together in the evening after Naomi goes to bed. And this works for me because it's one episode and it's not a whole movie where I fall asleep after like 20 minutes. So when I'm tired, right? So we watch like an episode every evening of something. And this helps because first of all, we bond together, but also if there is something to talk about, if there is something to ask for, then we have that time and space to do it.
Mm.
And it's very hard to find as parents. So you kind of have to make it happen.
Not to forget to connect and then talk about stuff that needs to be talked about.
Yeah, because then asking for help becomes harder because you keep on piling things up when as soon as you have a moment to let this out, you let it all out on the poor husband. Uh, and then, and then it becomes a problem, right? And so to create these like regular moments, not to wait too long to ask for help until like you can't do anything anymore, but to create opportunities and yeah, just not to wait to ask for help. Yeah.
About the Randall, it's like sometimes I feel like I need to do that. So for us, I warned Busty. It was like, Busty, I just gonna throw out my thoughts. They're
Right.
not necessarily super serious, but they're just wandering around my head. They need a little bit of free space. Just
Yeah.
listen. I don't need any advice. I just have to throw it up, and then right? And then, is it for you then easier to deal with them?
Well, you gave them space, and usually you say that I don't necessarily have to fix them or comment on
Yeah.
them.
Right.
So I just acknowledge that they're there, and then that's good for me.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, it's maybe some stuff that are maybe harsh, or kind of a bit cinema in my head is like this castle. and, and I throw it up and let it out there. And then, now it's okay. Now I feel good. And especially if Bessie knows beforehand that I'm going to do that, then he can prepare. I was like, okay, it's personal. It's just to let it out. And then, when you talk, and then, at least for me, there's people who prefer to write down their thoughts, but
Mm.
I'm more kind of a person that likes to talk. And I believe Basti is also that kind of person that likes to talk. And during the time you talk, then you think as well, and realizing stuff is like, oh, wow. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it does help to clarify your intentions because otherwise they feel like they have to fix your situation. That's
Yeah.
so because they want to help, right? But sometimes, again, it's knowing what really helps you. So if you tell him what helps me right now, just for you to shut up and listen,
Yeah.
then that helps. And also to kind of give it a time frame where they can listen. But I found myself often finding I was very wrong. Like while Tosha is playing video games or watching TV, right? And I'm like, something is pressing. Like I have a concern, or I have something I have to talk about, but then that's not the right time. And I'm expecting him to just drop everything and listen, but sometimes it's not possible. And so to give that, okay, when is a good time for you to have a talk, or can we talk this evening, right? That also helps.
Yeah. This kind of preparation on saying, I'd love to talk with you in the evening or
Mm,
sometime, or asking what time is the best for you. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's definitely kind of preparing the headspace.
Mm.
Yeah, without making them feel fearful, because sometimes it's like, when women say we have to talk, it's like, oh, what's happening? But like, just I often tell Toshia, can we talk this evening? It's nothing about you. I just need, to talk. Or I just want to talk about whatever, like moving into a new apartment or changing something in the rooms, like, but I need proper time. So let's talk about it this evening or something like that. So not to leave them completely clueless, I think it helps. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Otherwise, they're starting to create a castle in their head.
Yeah.
right. There's this joke within between us that he's always saying, "Are you gonna divorce me?" Like that's he's always his one liner when, and that shows me, okay, no, I have to tell you, like he's joking, of course, but like that's where his mind always like ends up like, "Are you gonna divorce me?" It's like he's joking, but I'm like, okay, that reminds me, no, I need to tell you what we need to talk about.
I mean, what helps for us, it's sure, I'm not sure how that is going to work with a child later on, but we love to go for walks because it
Hmm.
feels like we are not sitting in front of each other, staring in our eyes, and it's like
Right.
where this tension could be created. But we could just go outside, go for a walk, and there's this book. It's called "Walk the Blues Away,"
Hmm.
and so where there's emotion, there's always moving forward, and if there is a situation where we need to look at our eyes, then we can just stop and look at our eyes
Right.
and talk.
Yeah.
That really helps to get out this negative energy sometimes.
Mm-mm. Yeah, it releases pressure, and it's yeah, you're less focused, like you're not one against each other. It's like you're walking in the same direction,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Physically, like doing that physically really helps as well. Yeah, just
Yeah.
thinking if there is anything else, but yeah, there's, we could, there is a lot, there's a big topic, but yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much that you took your free time. And yeah, it was a real pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hopefully again soon.
Yeah, if there's any other topic you feel like that would be great to talk about on the Heine Couples podcast.
Sure, I'll think about it.
Yeah, if or have any kind of a task or homework for couples they could do.
Hmm. So we talked about self-reflection, right? I think that's where everything starts. Like really asking yourself, how do I feel? What do I need? Asking yourself those questions. I think we don't do that enough. And also another practical thing that I think might help is something that I learned from Toshie. And I don't know where, if maybe something that his parents did, but he would so often come to me out of the blue and ask me, "Are you okay?" Like he would, like he does this still now, like every day. And I think there's a good practice to do, like just checking in with each other, because that gets me to think, okay, am I okay? Like sometimes we don't do this by ourselves. And so to maybe ask support to your husband or to your wife in being like, can you just check in with me, like here and there, like, are you okay? Do you need anything? Right? Because we tend to get lost in our mind, and to start that process of like digging our own grave. And then if somebody makes that pose for us when we cannot do it for ourselves, then that really helps. So that's maybe another little practical advice, to just check in with each other, even if it looks like everything is okay, even if,
Yeah,
there's nothing going on, just how's everything going? Are you okay? Do you need anything?
yeah,
Usually there is always something, but it can be big or small, or maybe it's just a confirmation. No, I'm actually okay, like, and that also is a relief. So yeah, that's just a little exercise.
yeah, yeah. Now it's also when it's out more often you do it, then it's also easier to get faster into really deep inside. It's like, oh, how am I really doing? Not just like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm fine. But then I was like, yeah,
Mm.
um, to engage this thought process on.
Yeah, you help each other doing that self-reflection, right? Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. We're gonna write it in the
Okay.
description of the video.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much for your
Thank you,
time
guys.
again, and hope to see you sometime soon again. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.